but today's panel is discussing the Australian InsurTech landscape. Australia is both a key market for InsurTechs and also a source of innovation and partners for local insurers.
Thank you, Dale. Yeah, I'm really delighted to be here, and I'm just, a shame, as all of you, that it can't be kind of all in the one place, but it will happen sometime. So I'm in Sydney, and I'd like to acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, which is where I'm sitting here, and pay tribute to their leaders, past, present, and emerging. So InsurTech Australia, we have a great relationship with InsurTech New Zealand and many mutual members. And what I wanted to do today was just talk a little bit about why Australia is kind of a great destination for technology, for startups, and for InsurTech in particular. And then give you a bit of an overview of our ecosystem, our members and partners, and then a little bit of insight as to what I think some of the hot topics I've been seeing as I've kind of gone around and started in the role. So in terms of why, just on the next slide, I stole this little promo from Austrade about why Australia is kind of a great startup centre. So I thought you could borrow it if you need to kind of put it in your pitch deck or something. But really, we do have great support from Austrade and from the state governments around establishing Australia as a technology startup centre. So lots of big name technology providers like Atlassian and Canva, and they've really established a great collaboration area, particularly in Sydney. There's a startup hub, and it's like a tech central area, which is a great way to be located, and they give a lot of support to the startup community. And they've really been investing in building that. There's a Sydney Innovation and Technology Precinct called Tech Central that is coming. And they've invested in things like the Sydney Quantum Academy. So from that perspective, that really helps the collaboration. And when we look at Australia, it's ranked around startup ecosystems. One of the things we're great at is the fact that it's very collaborative. And I think that aligns really well with insurance, which we kind of all know maybe a bit different to some of the other tech startup areas, is very much based around that collaboration. We all need to kind of work together. And then if I maybe go to the next slide, a little about us. So we've been going for 5 years in different forms. We've been an association for a bit over 2 years, or a little bit further down the road as our own independent body than InsurTech New Zealand. We have 85 InsurTech members now, and I'll show them in a sec, but they're a really diverse range of different businesses. Majority are Australian headquartered, but we also have international organisations that have a sizable, meaningful presence in Australia. And we have now, I think we're up to 38 corporate partners. So that's the insurers and the tech firms and the lawyers, and that's really around how they contribute to the ecosystem. We run lots of events like you guys, and have a number of different media channels. So if you haven't already, you can just subscribe to our newsletters, and that's a great way to kind of see what's happening in the ecosystem. We're seeing strong growth, continuing around new members. We get about 40 new members a year, and then we get some that kind of fall out. So, so definitely year on year, the whole ecosystem is growing. If I go to the next slide, you'll see all our great members, and you'll see some of the names here. So there's a real diversity around those that are very much end customer facing, that are trying to more disrupt the existing players, those that are providing technology solutions, and the different parts of the channel, whether that's life insurance, general insurance, corporate insurance, and then sort of the added services. So, and all at different stages, from very new founders up to the very large Cover Genius, which is considered a unicorn in its kind of latest capital raising. Then just next is all our corporate partners, and they very much support us, like InsurTech New Zealand, around funding us ongoing, but also really working with the InsurTechs in different ways, whether that's kind of technology solutions or product solutions. And then, we work with the government and other organisations around how do we also help our members scale, and how do we really amplify their reach. So great kind of community, and again, definitely growing. And we're really also looking to expand it from you're probably the starting point of sort of general insurance into life and some of the other sectors. And then finally, just reflected on what I thought were the three kind of hot topics that we're kind of seeing, and you could, of course, add others to these. I think certainly climate and resilience, all of the big general insurers, that's, a core part of their activity, and a lot of their ventures and new investments and startups have that core objective of something that's going to help around those resilient solutions. There's a lot more interest in parametric that's been going for a few years, but we're seeing different offerings around that product. And we see that with the reinsurers as well. It's very much around they're wanting to have the net zero solutions. They're wanting to be really seen to contribute to the problem. So it's definitely an area where there's a lot more room for InsurTechs. The second I'd say is around sort of artificial intelligence and automation. And I think that's a topic that, it's been around for a while, but particularly, the larger insurers are really now investing in ways to automate some of their processes and technology. There's probably a mix of those that are still kind of playing catch up in their technology. There's some very basic systems. And I think they're trying to now get to that next stage. And then you see some of them that are more sophisticated and are really starting to push into ways that you can really use different, remote sensing technologies and different, computer vision and voice technologies. So that's definitely an area that is lots of more investment. And then thirdly is around sort of open finance and the consumer data right. And this has really been driven from the government, an agenda around providing much more access to data and for consumers owning their own data and providing an easier way for consumers to share their data. That's already been rolled out in the banking sector. And just in January, that was announced that would also expand into open finance, including general insurance. So that's a big area. It's going to take a little while to know what that means, but I think it's an opportunity, particularly for the InsurTechs, around how can they use this data, what data is coming through in different ways, but also for the existing incumbents around, how do they see this not just as a compliance exercise, but use it to really provide a better customer solution. So I put those three out there, and I'm sure we can talk about them more later. But yeah, I'll just leave it at there, and happy to have any questions as we go along.
Hi everyone. Again, thank you for inviting me to speak today. Been looking forward to it. I have attended the events in person before. They've always been good. So it's nice to see you all online today. For those of you who haven't spoken to us before and just want to get a bit of insight into Grappler, I've just got these slides here today just for a general overview. So if we just go to the next slide. So in a nutshell, Grappler, we're a managed software as a service solution. We, right from the start, have leveraged machine learning and intelligent automation technology, and we specialise in the back office processes around credit control. So that's our niche. We've been working at this now since 2015. So we have obviously built up a lot of data over that time and built up our machine learning models to really transform the back office credit control and data management process. And that's dealing with both insurers and underwriting agencies. So our specialty is we automate manual processes, manual back office processes, and the various tools that the admin teams have. So it's normally various in-house tools. We bring that all together into Grappler, and we help to implement best practices, improve controls, and lift governance and responsibility. And we've obviously had lots of learnings from our customers over the years as to best practice. So Grappler's data matchings through the use of intelligent automation, business rules, end user control, security, authentication, audit capabilities, reports, dashboards. We do all of this to help reduce fraud and operational risk, which is a key area for our clients, especially over the last few years. So that's a bit of an overview of Grappler. So today we've got customers in Australia and New Zealand. This includes insurers and underwriting agencies. Our team is predominantly based in New Zealand and India. We're looking to expand into other global markets. The problem we're solving is actually a global issue for all insurers. And we're also going to continue to expand in Australia. We always focus on the second S in SaaS. So we're very big on service and obviously continuous innovation. Like I often hold workshops when we can and speak to our customers all the time about improving best practices, and we're very adaptable to meet the changing needs of our customers.
Thanks for joining, everyone. Kia ora koutou. I'll keep this brief because I just want to move on more to more important things such as Australia and the market. But InsurTech really started out as a platform targeted at micro insurers in developing nations to provide really comprehensive, flexible and scalable back office insurance platform, really capable of supporting products in large volume. And since then, we really evolved because there's plenty of opportunity there. There's plenty of revenue. There's not necessarily a business model there. So we've pivoted since then to really be a mission critical cloud-based insurance administration platform, providing that end-to-end policy, claims, accounts, document management systems, now targeting mid-market insurers, MGAs and brokers. We're an international team with international customers, and our primary target market now is in Australia. And we've really designed our product in the last couple of years so agencies can leverage our API to easily build or integrate into any existing purchase path or distribution channel for insurance products. And we still stay that core and excellent back office administration system.
It's kind of three things. I think firstly, as a technology centre, so kind of as I said, there's a lot of emerging technology here, and that kind of collaboration and the support around that community with a lot of different kind of startup programs, and I guess that then brings the talent associated with that. I'd say secondly, from an insurance perspective, we're I think we're a top 15 global insurance market. So we have just slightly that bigger scale, the variety of product. And Australia is seen kind of globally as a bit of a testing ground because it has quite a mature regulatory, or a tough regulatory stance, so that, there's quite a lot of digital adoption amongst customers. But it's not so big that if you lose a lot of money and it all goes bad, that you have a big failure on your balance sheet. So we certainly see a lot of the international insurers see it as a great kind of test and learn market. And so then it does bring that collaborative environment. And then thirdly, I think, there's just a great community here. And, we've certainly seen that with the growth in InsurTech Australia. So it really kind of brings those together. And then it becomes, a launching platform. I think our biggest challenge, a little like New Zealand, is, we're a long way and time zone. So they're probably, the downsides of Australia, but, we've certainly seen with the whole COVID, much more of that digital adoption and the virtual meetings and everything that's probably taken some of those barriers away.
Fantastic. That's really good. And I think as a member of InsurTech Australia, Javelin, I can certainly attest to the collaboration and the support that is available within the ecosystem that InsurTech Australia has created. And I would encourage any InsurTechs listening to certainly look to become members. It certainly provides a lot of collaboration and support.
The pandemic actually did remove a lot of those barriers around distance. Distance isn't a thing anymore. We're all well used to communicating over video calls and remote. So in terms of selling and implementing in Australia, it has actually made life easier for us because we can actually reach a lot more prospects over phone calls, and people are a lot more willing to do video rather than face-to-face. And training, people are used to doing their training online now, whereas it always used to be would have to be on site, which just meant you couldn't reach as many customers. So overall, it's actually been a good experience in that respect. I think it's changed the way we work, and I think it's going to stay. The remote working model is actually working quite well for a lot of us and giving a lot of us more of a work-life balance as well.
John, how's your experience been selling and implementing into Australia?
Yeah, my experience is pretty similar, but I started this role 2 years ago, and I moved back to New Zealand from the US in December 2019 after 20 years of working in the US. And so, I aced the timing in terms of dodging the US COVID experience and the pandemic experience. But, since that time, of the 18 staff that work at InsurTech, I've only ever met 2 in person. The last time I set foot in Australia was in the late 90s. And the last time I worked in insurance was also in the early 90s when I worked for Tower when I was at university. So the last 2 years have really been, if our target market is insurers in Australia and we're in a pandemic and we can't travel for conferences and pre-sales, what is the best strategy to get into Australia and sell to insurers there? So that's been my experience over the last 2 years, and I think that for us is good networking remotely and from New Zealand. So you actually recommended that I join InsurTech Australia last year, and so joining memberships just such as InsurTech Australia and InsurTech New Zealand are really critical for us. Being active with online value-added content marketing. And gathering market insights from organizations such as InsurTech Australia, such as New Zealand Trade and Enterprise, and being members of other organizations such as UAC, really given us some good databases of target customers for us. And we're in general insurance. Midtown insurers and managing agents are really a good target for us. So it's been two-pronged. It's been, one is how can we acquire new customers? And 2, how can we enable our existing Australian customers to grow leveraging our platform? I don't know what I'm doing, but what I have is a framework to try and figure that out. So what we have is a template that anyone who wants to I think we'll share my email details at the end of the session. It's a template for what good market entry thinking would look like. And it's one that we've used for our target market in Australia in terms of thinking about what experiments we can run if we want to achieve certain goals in terms of acquisition. What does it take to acquire one outbound opportunity versus one inbound opportunity? Those kind of experiments.
Consumer expectations. And I think, we're now at a point of maturity around, people just do everything online on their phone and they expect the insurance process to be similarly just seamless and easy to use. And so I don't know about you guys, but my personal insurance experience is still very disjointed, and I still get things sent to my old address because I can't update it without ringing something. So there has just been this under adoption of basic technology that's in other sectors like banking, because we only had to send out a renewal once a year. And I think we could get away with that for sort of 10 years or so. And now people are like, hang on, and now there's alternatives. And so I think the fact that some of the InsurTechs are now coming through, and you'll see, particularly some of the US, that there's that expectation now that it is, and it's so much easier and cheaper. And then that's also then forcing and bringing the existing insurers along. So I think that consumer experience is huge. And then you build into that, of course, the COVID and the drive to digital, and then, the opportunity with just all this data as well, as we're seeing, becoming a lot cheaper to have sensor data and all these things. There's then really a challenge if you're not using that data, because you're going to be, selected against if the new incumbents are able to integrate in and use that data and the existing players aren't. So I think that's, causing concern and really sort of now starting to ramp up the whole sort of adoption and technology.
Our focus is very much on the service of our SaaS offering. So obviously, being headquartered in New Zealand, we do need to make sure that we support Australia now. So it's made us relook at distributing our workforce at Grappler and having a few more key resources in Australia. And again, it's just making sure that culture of delivering service is carried across to the new resource and the new hires, and obviously hiring over this time where we can't travel to Australia. So again, it's going to be hiring not face-to-face. So it's probably the biggest challenge for us.
We're a trans-Tasman InsurTech. So we have a founder who has a massive amount of insurance knowledge based on the Sunshine Coast of Queensland, which helps immensely. But in terms of, you know, the sentiment, I think more, you know, if you look at the market size of New Zealand, it's about, you know, 7 billion of GWP in terms of general insurance. If you look at Australia, it's 10x that. Right, it's 72 billion general insurance written. So it's the market between here and there is a 10x proposition. So because it's so close, because we're trans-Tasman, because we have a distributed team, you know, so we're a team in New Zealand, Australia, Bangladesh, India, Philippines. You know, we can support both countries' hours relatively easy, and there's really a, you know, a small amount of a target market still in Australia in terms of number of companies. But in terms of the sentiment of the industry itself, right, there's a lot of legacy systems that make digital transformation hard. So, you know, when you're talking about service, the process of taking an insurer on a journey of digital transformation is really hard. For an InsurTech who's, you know, waving the SaaS flag, you know, we make it sound easy, but the actual implementation of that, if you're an established insurer, is the most difficult part. And that's the part that is what you're talking about, right? Which is the sentiment of wanting to do it and the sentiment of how to do it are very different things. And it's all about, you know, working consistently with various, you know, kind of shareholder buy-in. And this is not just the Australian market, this is the insurance market in general, before you can even get the project started.
Look, I think it is in a couple of ways. I think, you know, a lot of the insurers have been tied up for 2 or 3 years in just, you know, remediation and compliance and those topics. And so they haven't, you know, I mean, they, you know, they'll have innovation teams and they'll have labs and they'll have ventures, but it's not their core priority. And so I think that has created, I guess, room for some of those InsurTechs that aren't dealing with those legacy systems to really grow and launch and to partner with, you know, maybe some of the more nimble insurers. So I think that is certainly an opportunity. And I think there are also, you know, different solutions to come in. And, you know, I think, you know, increasingly the idea of these large scale, multi-year, multi-million-dollar IT programs is kind of gone. And so I think the opportunity for the InsurTechs is how can I solve that small problem and bolt in and work with others in a much more agile way, and also where, you know, there is a need. So where there is suddenly a, you know, a compliance agenda, then people will do it, and suddenly there's a budget. So I think it's kind of picking those opportunities, and it, you know, it's really who you partner with as well is kind of key, that you're not kind of lost in a morass of partnering with someone that you know exhausts you and you lose your runway while you're trying to get a yes from them. So. The data one, because I don't think anyone has really that much in terms of the insurance sector is that mature in terms of looking at, you know, what is the data that's now available from the banking, you know, how can we use that and embed that, and we kind of know that's coming. And I think the InsurTech is going to be so much faster at really integrating and getting the insights from that. And I think everyone's just, the insurers will just kind of, you know, as much as they'll like, you know, be meaning to respond to the opportunity, just the speed at which they move. So I think that is a big opportunity, and also the way that it's here being rolled out in a cross-sector view. So there's energy data and telecoms data, and, you know, so someone who's looking at it in a completely different way, whereas the traditional insurance view is very much, you know, underwriting, and I look at my risk selection and, you know, this is the data I've always used and here's how an actuary does it. So I think the advantage that the InsurTechs really bring is that different way of thinking. And tackling the problem.
So our introduction was from delivering very well for a New Zealand company that was a subsidiary of an Australian company, which is quite often the case. A lot of the decision making is done in Australia. So if you do well here in New Zealand, yeah, then it is quite a good way to get into that market. And also insurance, having been in insurance prior to being in Grappler, it's actually quite small in terms of the industry, and you'll find a lot of the people in insurance have been in it for 20, 30, 40 years, and they all know each other. That's just the way it's been. And so if you deliver well, then it's word of mouth goes a long way because that's so connected. So that's definitely been our experiences.
In our experience, we've done well in one agency and they've told other agencies, and those other agencies kind of shoulder tap us. So it's great. Coming back to some of the compliance stuff though, there are specific rails that you do have to put on in the Australian market in terms of reporting. So we are heavily in the car insurance market in Australia, but there's a whole bunch of rules and regulations about how you can offer the cool down periods. Everyone deserves a renewal, right? So, in New Zealand, it's a lot easier just to not offer someone a new insurance product, where in Australia, you have to. So how do you intentionally churn a customer that you don't want to keep? Those kind of strategies come into play. On the APRA reporting side, right, this is not something that we want to focus on or be good at because it's just painful. So we want to try and partner with companies that can provide that area of compliance with an insurer, because we want to make sure that we're looking at their holistic solution, just not what is it about us that we want, what is it about their whole solution that we need to consider to make sure that they can operate and be compliant. Because we know that compliance is a double-edged sword, right? Meeting compliance means you stay extra sticky. Because compliance creates a kind of new market in terms of demand. So we can offer compliant-based solutions, that's going to make our offering a lot more compelling for customers.
The same. I mean, I think the fact that we haven't had open borders like you guys, the bigger insurers are challenged because they can't bring people in. So anything related to risk and compliance, the salaries are, have skyrocketed. I think most of the InsurTechs have dealt that by really having very much more a policy of the right talent, doesn't matter where they are. So there's probably a much more distributed workforce. And I think it's very, very mixed. So I hear some people would say, they've got no issues in recruiting kind of their tech talent, but others do. So I think it's quite mixed, really.
To be honest, we've been quite lucky. We've used the same recruiter from the start, and he knows us very well and what's the best fit for us. So, and he's quite connected, so that's been good for us.
Yeah, so far. So keep hold of that relationship.
Yeah.
John, how about you?
Yeah, we used to do pretty well word of mouth, but have to go the recruiter route, which is more expensive lately. To the point now where we have to use 2 different agencies. Finding people is getting harder and harder, and especially technical talent, developer talent, just because the market is so competitive, and I think it's been compounded by COVID in terms of demand. Yeah. So we've done searches in the past where we haven't got anyone, and had to go back out to market again with different terms, different salary rates, just to try and find that right person.
2 years ago, I would have answered that and obviously got it completely wrong. So it is a bit up in the air. But I mean, recently we have been seeing, because we are predominantly back office processes, that's obviously the solution that we're offering. That has predominantly always been an offshore function if you've got trying to scale for that without the technology. A lot of that offshore functions are coming back just because of the global uncertainty of having workforce outside of Australia. We are seeing a lot of that coming back, but by bringing that back, they're now looking for solutions to scale. And so we are seeing more of a trend towards digital solutions in that back office space. That previously was more dealt with by just offshoring those functions. So in that respect, it's actually been a positive in that, you know, back office space of insurance.
Yeah, so we're in both markets, and in my experience so far, Australia is more familiar for me to sell into as a market than New Zealand is, just from a cadence, a digital transformation perspective. So that's why, as a business, it's our primary focus. You know, but as I said before, the adoption of digital solutions in the insurance industry is still pretty latent. But I think the biggest difference I'm noticing so far is just when it comes to digital solutions is mindset based. So in the US, everything is incredibly customer centric. So, you know, for them, modern insurance companies can't survive without focusing in and adopting on really customer centric values. And so that's the biggest difference I've noticed just in the insurance industry from my experience of, you know, personally procuring insurance in the US and in New Zealand and trying to understand how it works in Australia, because we design complete onboarding workflows, is there's a massive opportunity by insurers focusing on kind of customer-centric values in terms of really increasing their potential for market share, for loyalty. And it's, as Simone said earlier, right? Purchasing insurance right now just seems a little bit disjointed at times, both in Australia and New Zealand. And I think for that alone, there's a massive opportunity that is for InsurTechs in both of those markets. Yeah, I'm going to make the claim that customer success is the insurance product. It's not the actual policy itself. You know, because, you know, onboarding and maintaining a customer's experience of an insurance product, which no one wants to buy. You know, no one wakes up and says, I'm going to buy some insurance products today. You know, so making sure that customer experience is so spot on is just going to be the key in the future, just to maintaining business.
Fantastic. That's really, really good. So look, that wraps it up for today. I do want to say, firstly, a massive thanks to the audience for coming along and listening. This is the first of many events this year. We want to build our ecosystem, our community, and look to InsurTech Australia in terms of replicating what they've done. I think you've done an amazing job. So we want to build that sort of community here. So thanks for the audience to joining in. And also want to thank our panelists. Simone, thanks for joining us from Sydney. Colleen, thank you so much for joining us from the beautiful Bay of Plenty. And obviously John for joining us from the beautiful North Shore. So look out for the next event, everyone. And thank you so much for joining. It's been amazing.